guys, welcome to another video. In today's video, I'll be going through my July wrap-up. Now, I did do a July wrap-up for my book readings. I watched a lot of things this month and I read a lot of things, so I decided to separate the two, mainly probably due to our lockdown that we're currently in. So like there's nothing else to do but, you know, stay home, read some books and binge a lot of like TV shows and movies. That's just how we do in lockdown, am I right? Before I move on with the video, can we just appreciate my earrings today? It's so adorable. Not sponsored in any way, but these earrings are from Lau Studio. She's like an Aussie artist and she does like a ton of like cute jewelry. I'll probably link her shop below just because I'm a huge fan of her jewelry pieces. They're like really quirky, but they're so cute. And recently I made like a big purchase from her. These are probably my favorite earrings that I bought from that order. But appreciation here, like so cute, so weird, but I like. Let's move on to the movie reviews. So the very first thing I watched in July was Hush. It's kind of like a survival thriller horror. It's about this deaf girl who lives like in the middle of the woods, or like she lives in the wilderness somewhat, and then a serial killer kind of shows up to her house and she basically needs to survive the night. You would think that she has somewhat of a disadvantage because she's deaf, but the movie does a really good job at flipping that expectation and she kind of uses her disability to her advantage. It's kind of like a situation where the killer is kind of toying with his victim before he, you know, kills them. Let me just say, big mistake. It was actually pretty suspenseful. It has a very small cast of characters and I don't think the budget was very big. If you just want a thrill, you just want a movie that's a survive the night situation with like a serial killer on the loose, and it's a movie that's relatively contained in one location, this might be the movie for you. This is directed by Mike Flanagan. He's kind of known for doing a lot of like thriller horror movies. I think the most recent one he's directed is Dr. Sleep. I haven't watched that movie, unfortunately, but I love The Shining, just saying. And Dr. Sleep is kind of like a sequel. At least the book is a sequel to The Shining. Honestly, not gonna lie, I haven't watched anything that he's done except for Hush. But if anything, I really liked Hush, so I might check out his other works. He's also worked on The Haunting of Hill House, which I've heard a ton of good things about. That's also on Netflix. Anyway, this movie came out all the way back in 2016. It was a really, really good watch. It's one of those sensory deprivation kind of movies. I loved it. I always love when movies kind of use that as a concept and then really ramp up the suspense in a movie. Recently, I reviewed The Quiet Place Part 2, also another sensory deprivation kind of movie. I love those kind of stuff. So this movie was kind of like a fun movie that I randomly stumbled upon. I loved it. I ended up giving it 3 stars out of 5, which is a good rating for me. I think anything 3 and up is always a recommend from me. Personally, if you just want a suspenseful thrill ride, I think this one's the perfect one for you. Oh my gosh. The next movie that I watched was Misery. Need I say more? I think I read Misery, like the book, last year and absolutely loved it. It was so horrific. There was like a constant suspense. It is another kind of survival situation. If you guys don't know what Misery is, it was originally adapted from a Stephen King book. It's about a guy who's this famous author and then one day he gets caught up in a snowstorm. His car kind of crashes and then he wakes up in someone else's house who claims to be his #1 fan. Yeah, just horrific things ensues. Initially, you're to believe that she is caring for him. I don't really want to elaborate more than that because it just gets really intense. You know you're in for a little bit of a horrific situation because it is a Stephen King adaptation. Misery was originally released all the way back in 1990. It was directed by Rob Reiner. Is that how you say his name? Rob Reiner. He's a director that I've seen a few things from. He's done The Princess Bride, which I'm a huge fan of. Oh my gosh, so much nostalgia and just so much whimsy. I love that movie. But he's also done like movies like When Harry Met Sally. I also remember watching North with a baby Elijah Wood. Well, he's not a baby, but it was when Elijah Wood was really, really young. Considering like the genres of his other movies, Misery is kind of, well, I would say it's in the horror genre, which isn't really his genre usually. So I was kind of pleasantly surprised by Misery because it was so horrific. It was kind of like a slow build up with the suspense and the tension, because at the beginning you're not really sure whether, you know, Annie Wilkins is a good person or not, but you get spurts of like insanity here and there, and then it just escalates and escalates. So highly recommend. I might end up doing like a dual review for the book and movie later on in October. I've planned some videos for October, Spooktober if you will. So yeah, huge fan. I can't believe I've never watched Misery before. I knew the iconic kind of scenes from Misery, but I've never watched it in its entirety. So this was a very pleasant surprise for me, and I absolutely loved Misery. Like, I've loved the book as well, but the movie was also very suspenseful, so good. And oh my gosh, Kathy Bates as Annie is so terrifying. In fact, I thought that she would have been a lot older when this movie was filmed, but I was quite surprised that Annie looked quite young and youthful, and I was just like, oh, she's like not who I imagined when I was reading the book. So it was nice, but no less terrifying is what I should say. I ended up giving Misery a 4 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved the movie. Highly recommend. It's iconic. If you guys haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. Go out and watch it. There's a reason why it's so famous, and Annie forever will be one of my top villains of all time. Highly recommend. We're gonna move on before I talk on and on about this movie. Loved it. The next movie that I watched is also another exciting one. It's The Lighthouse, and I don't know why I never watched this in the theaters. I feel like this would have been a perfect watch in the theaters. I guess I can't say that I'm a huge fan of Robert Eggers. That is the director for The Lighthouse, but recently I watched The Witch, and I was really like, okay, I didn't love it, but I was very intrigued with this director and how he films his movies. It's very beautiful and atmospheric. So I was actually really excited for The Lighthouse. When I first heard about it circulating the internet and people were really like raving on about The Lighthouse, it was filmed in a very interesting way, like an old-timey way. I definitely think that they used like vintage cameras to film this movie. It does fall into the category of the horror genre, but it's more so like a descent into madness. Just the way this movie was filmed was so artistic, so beautiful. I do really appreciate the use of like vintage filmmaking. It's all in black and white, and when you watch it, it's like in a different, how should I say, like a frame? When you watch a normal kind of movie, it's like a full-on frame, right? Like a rectangle, but this is like almost like a square. I forget what that's called, but I thought that was very interesting. It would have been very beautiful to see on like the big screen. Unfortunately, I never watched it in the theaters, but okay, I'm gonna just say it now. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 star rating. I did really enjoy it, but it was somewhat strange. It's a very kind of surreal sort of movie. It's about a guy that comes to this lighthouse. There's already a lighthouse keeper living there, but every so often, like every few months or something, like they replace the worker that comes to work with this lighthouse keeper. And obviously our main character, who is played by Robert Pattinson, and the lighthouse keeper, who's played by William Dafoe. Oh my gosh, these two are like a match made in heaven. I loved their dynamic. It was so like quirky and like genuine, but also there's like an added tension of like this abusive relationship. The lighthouse keeper, played by William Dafoe, is forcing this young guy to do all the chores while he seemingly does nothing. And then there's kind of like this added mystery with the lighthouse. Our kind of sailor character who's working there, played by Robert Pattinson, he's not allowed to go up to the lighthouse, and there's like kind of this rule, and then it just gets crazy. It gets weird. You're seeing like weird sea creatures and mermaids and stuff, but you don't know if it's actually real or not. It's almost sort of like a metaphorical sort of movie. I don't know. I think more than like the story and plot itself, the main praise I would give is for the aesthetic. The cinematography is beautiful, and also the acting. Oh my gosh, William Dafoe is just so, how should I say, like electrifying. Like his performance is just so, you're so drawn to it. He was so captivating as this eccentric lighthouse keeper, and you kind of really felt sorry for Robert Pattinson's character throughout the movie. and then there's moments where you're a little bit confused between who's kind of like the bad guy in this situation. It's weird. I will say that it's weird and I loved it. I feel like every now and then I do really appreciate, I really like weird movies, and this just came at the right time when I was just getting the feels of watching a weirdo kind of movie. Am I crazy? Maybe, but I loved it. I would highly recommend The Lighthouse if you haven't seen it. It's just a wild ride. That's all I'm gonna say. The next thing that I finished wasn't a movie per se, it was a show. It's a show on Disney Plus. Can you guess? It was Loki. Oh my gosh. I loved this series so much. Like, okay, I did start it last month, but the last episode came out in July, so I'm gonna talk about it in today's video. How can I explain this crazy concept? Obviously, Loki is a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think with any of the TV shows, I think you would have to watch a lot of the Marvel movies to kind of get references, but they say that you can watch it as a standalone thing, but I don't know. I feel like with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you would have had to have the context of some of the movies, and same with Loki. I think maybe WandaVision, you can watch it as its own little closed off story, but it seems like that is also going to tie into one of the big Marvel Cinematic Universe movies in the future, so I don't know. But with Loki, I think you kind of need a little bit of context to watch the show, but it is also really, really good. So even if like some of you guys haven't seen like a lot of the Marvel movies, I really do want to recommend it to people just because the concept's so like crazy bizarre, and just, oh my gosh, I have to talk about the score. I was obsessed with the music in Loki. It probably is one of my favorite scores in any of the Marvel Cinematic Universes. Also, if you're a fan of the Loki character, it's a whole show based around him. The added addition of Owen Wilson, so good. Oh my gosh, I never thought that I would love Owen Wilson as much as I love him in Loki. Just like the dynamic between Loki and Owen Wilson's character, they bantered off each other so well. My recent favorite kind of bromance between the two. I loved everything about this show. Totally bingeable. You could probably do it in one day. It does have quite a bizarre concept about time, and there's like this whole kind of system of people that's keeping our timeline kind of intact, and then you have people that do things. It could be like world changing events, or like small things that someone might do, like take the wrong turn on a day to work or something like that. It could be something so simple, but they cause like a massive ripple effect in the timeline that we're currently in, and you have these people that come in and take out these variants that go off the course of what they're supposed to do in that timeline. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. It's so like timey-wimey and I love it. It also has this kind of 70s, 80s kind of sci-fi aesthetic, and I love that kind of retro look, but of course it has like very high-tech things. It's like kind of a weird world. This is kind of a ongoing theme throughout this month. I just like weird. What can I say? All I'm gonna say is that there's twists and turns that you may not expect, but I just had such a fun time with this weird concept. I love how Marvel Cinematic Universe is turning to the weird and bizarre, which is what I personally vibe well with. I do like kind of superhero concept, but I think it's a little oversaturated now. There's just so many superhero movies coming out that I just need a bit of weird and bizarre and just thinking outside the box, you know? But I will say that I've always been a fan of like the Marvel kind of cinematic universe. I know it's very kind of mainstream and everybody talks about it, but look, sometimes I'm a simple gal and I do like that kind of stuff. I feel like it's been like years in the making. I've grown up watching like these superhero movies, and I've always been a fan of comic books for many, many years, and finally we're just getting so many cool adaptations of these comics that I love. I don't read a lot of Marvel, but there are comic books that I've read that have been getting adaptations as well, so I just love how it's coming full circle. I don't want to say too much about Loki because I don't want to get into spoiler territory. All I'll say is that it kind of deals with time. If you haven't seen it, just go into it. Trust me, you're gonna love it. Okay, so the next movie that I watched is The Host, or also known as Kaemul. It is a Korean film directed by someone you may know, Bong Joon-ho. He was all over the place last year. Wait, or the year before? Oh my gosh, when did Parasite come out? You may have heard of Bong Joon-ho, the director of Parasite. He's actually made a lot of movies, but one of my personal favorites is The Host. I think this is one of the first Bong Joon-ho movies that I've ever seen. This came out all the way back in 2006. Yes, 2006. I first watched it all the way back then when I was still in high school, and I absolutely loved this movie. Oh my gosh. I mean, it is kind of about a monster that appears in the city and just wreaks havoc, but it's also a very emotional story about this family, and it has everything. It has humor, it has action, it's emotional. Oh my gosh. Also, you know, Bong Joon-ho likes to put in social commentary, and I didn't realize how timely it is in this current climate. But if you haven't seen The Host, I would highly recommend you watch it and just see how we can kind of relate to it. I ended up rating this one a 4.5 stars out of 5. It's one of my favorite. Okay, I do love a lot of different like Bong Joon-ho movies, but this is one of my favorite just because it's got a little bit of nostalgia, but also it's a really good movie. I mean, he's a master at filmmaking. There's not much to criticize with him, but I just really loved this concept because most of his movies are relatively grounded. Oh, actually, no, there's Snowpiercer and then there's Okja, so maybe not so grounded, but a lot of his other movies are very grounded in reality. But this one is kind of like a creature film, and you know I love creature films. This one personally speaks to me. I've always loved this movie, so it was a great kind of opportunity to rewatch it. I haven't rewatched this movie in like years. I don't think I've rewatched it since I was in high school, so this was a really nice kind of catch up. Oh, it was just such a wild ride. I don't want to say too much about the story, but basically, of course, it's set in Seoul. There's like this huge kind of river in the city called the Han River, and it's discovered that there's this huge kind of like monsterish creature there. It kind of wreaks havoc along like the waters. It like kind of drags and collects people. There's like a family that owns like a little convenience store near the Han River, and that's how they also get involved. Also because of this unknown creature, there's also like this added tension, mystery and suspense regarding like this unknown virus that's kind of spreading throughout the city. So very kind of relatable to our current climate, I should say, but I don't want to elaborate more than that. Anyway, the story kind of focuses on this one family. The youngest daughter in this family, she gets taken by the monster, and so this family, at first they think she's gone dead because the monster took her, but then it's kind of revealed that she may be alive, so this family takes it on themselves to go find her, and it's just so suspenseful, so fun, and so emotional, you know? So it does have a mix of different things going for it, and I loved it. If you're a fan of Bong Joon-ho, I would highly recommend, but I would highly recommend for anyone who's also like a fan of creature movie, fun action, a bit of comedy, but also serious drama, and also having like, you know, social commentary all blended in one thing. This is the movie for you. I loved it. Highly recommend. One of my favorite Bong Joon-ho movies. Okay, so the next movie that I watched was Black Widow. That came out this year. I mean, it was supposed to come out last year, but of course, because of our pandemic situation, it got pushed to this year. So it got released. I finally watched it. Did I like it? I mean, I gave it, wait, what did I give it again? I gave it a 3.5 stars out of 5. I thought it was a fun action movie, but I wouldn't say that it's my favorite Marvel movie. I've always been intrigued by Black Widow. I've always loved her character, but again, like, I don't know. This movie kind of has almost the spy espionage feel, but it's also over the top action as well. It's pretty dramatic once it ramps up on the action, but I would say that it's still like a fun kind of action movie to watch, but it's not the greatest. I will say that I did really find the relationship between, you know, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow character and Florence Pugh's character. They're supposed to be like siblings, but they're Russian spies, so they're not really like biological siblings. things. It kind of has that sort of familial tension, and I really liked Florence Pugh in this. I think I just like Florence Pugh in anything. She's just an adorable actress, and anything she plays, she brings in that Florence Pugh quirk into her characters. I loved it. The villain wasn't that great. You know, Marvel, they're not very good at making their villains. You know, it was kind of an over-top sort of villain, but I did like the whole spy espionage kind of situation. This is also directed by a female director, Kate Shortland. I don't know what else she's done, but I'm actually very impressed that we've got a female director. I had a fun time, but like I said, wasn't my favorite. Okay, so the next movie that I watched, oh my gosh, all the feels. It was Luca. It's the new Pixar movie. This one was directed by Enrico Casarosa. Oh my gosh, totally butchered that name. I'm so sorry. Looking on Letterboxd, he's only directed 2 things, including Luca. The only other thing that he's directed is La Luna. It gives me very similar vibes as Luca, just even the way they're animated. Because in Luca, like the facial features of the characters are quite different from other Pixar movies. It's very distinct, and looking at just like the poster for La Luna, it seems like he has a very similar theme in how the character design is. And of course, this movie came out this year. It's set in like the Amalfi Coast in Italy, and it's about these 2 sea creatures and their little mini adventures in this little seaside town. It's actually so cute. I got emotional because of how sweet and beautiful this movie was. It's such a kind of funny situation. These 2 mer people, or like sea monsters. They're sea monsters, but like it's just so cute how their dream is to have a Vespa. It's funny because I didn't even know that these scooters were called Vespas. Like I've always called them scooters, but you know, their dreams are so like small, but it means like the world to these 2 sea creatures. One of the sea creatures has been living on the land for a while, and then this other sea creature is in a bit of a fish out of water situation. Shenanigan ensues. There's like this very sweet sort of friendship that both of these characters interact with on land. I honestly think there's a slight romantic tension between the 2 sea creatures, not gonna lie. It's adorable. And it's quite emotional. Like I got emotional. Luca isn't that sad, you know, there are emotional moments, but it's not a movie that you'd be crying in. But I teared up, man. I teared up. I guess I'm just emotionally weak, man. I loved this movie so much. It was just so sweet. I don't know why people didn't really like this movie that much. I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's quite a contained story. It really doesn't have high stakes in it at all. Oh, actually it does have pretty high stakes considering they're in a village of people that hunt and kill sea monsters. Yeah, I guess the stakes are pretty high, but in terms of like the Vespa situation, all these 2 characters are doing is trying to win this yearly competition in the town, and it's just so cute. It's almost like so like childish, but I don't know what it is, but I loved it. And anything to do with sea creatures, I really love sea creatures. So the fact that this was about sea monsters coming onto land, but they're also like very adorably animated, I loved it. I expect nothing less from a Pixar movie, but it was beautiful. I loved it. What more can I say? If you want something sweet, something with heart, something that is just feel good and colorful and just beautiful to watch, it would be Luca. I ended up giving this movie 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend. So beautiful, so sweet, so touching. I honestly think I'm gonna be rewatching this one when I'm feeling a little low. Luca is the movie that's gonna pick me up. The next movie is another animated movie, and it may possibly be one of my favorite animated movies of all time. Well, that's a lot to compete with because I have a lot of favorite animated movies, but Song of the Sea. When I first saw this circulating online and I saw like the animation style, I was like, this is the one for me. The animation company also made Wolfwalker, which was one of my favorite movies so far this year, but then it's kind of rivaling Song of the Sea. They have a very similar animation style. It's very beautiful. It's very folklore-esque. Honestly, every single scene, you can just screenshot it and it would be like a work of art. This animation company can do no wrong for me anymore. I'm a huge fan of this studio already, and I'm gonna be excited for anything that they make in the future. I'm so excited for this studio. If you haven't seen Wolfwalker or Song of the Sea, highly recommend. I honestly don't need to say more. I don't know how to say, but if you like that kind of folklore tale, but also a more European animation style, everything just looks hand-drawn and it's just so stunning. Go on Google and just look up pictures of either Wolfwalker or Song of the Sea, and you can determine the beauty, the majesty of their animation style. It's almost groundbreaking, and just like the color palettes they use, so my aesthetic. Anyway, getting back to the movie that I watched, Song of the Sea. It came out all the way back in 2014. This movie was directed by Tom Moore. I'm just gonna read the synopsis on Letterboxd because I can't articulate the words properly right now. So yeah. It says, the story of the last seal child's journey home. After their mother's disappearance, Ben and Saoirse are sent to live with Granny in the city. When they resolve to return to their home by the sea, the journey becomes a race against time, as they are drawn into a world Ben knows only from his mother's folk tales. But this is no bedtime story. These fairy folk have been in our world far too long. It soon becomes clear to Ben that Saoirse is the key to their survival. I feel like that synopsis is pretty vague. All I can say for this movie and a lot of the movies from this studio is that it has a lot of Celtic mythology entwined into it, and I am living for it. I don't know what else to say. Just look at the poster. It's beautiful. That is the vibe you're gonna get throughout the whole movie. They're just so aesthetically pleasing to watch, but also the story has a lot of heart. It's very emotional. Just trust me on this. I ended up giving this movie 4 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. Highly recommend. Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to talk about the next movie that I watched. It was Vampire's Kiss. So this came out all the way back in 1988. It stars our beloved Nicolas Cage. It's the movie with the Nicolas Cage meme, you know? I don't know, I'll just add the photo here. This movie is just so iconic. I was not prepared for the insanity that ensued from Nicolas Cage's character in this. He's just so, I can't really say it's bad acting per se, but it kind of is. This movie has a very kind of campy feel. I think it's categorized into the comedy horror genre. The situation is quite tragic, but while you're watching it, you're not getting any of that. You're just getting like Nicolas Cage crazy. It was just so beautiful to watch. Oh my gosh, I can't take myself seriously. I'm just gonna say it's not a good movie, but it's a fun movie to watch with your friends. You know what I mean? It's one of those crazy, just insane movies that you just have fun with, even though you know it's kind of campy, kind of cheesy. The acting, I think Nicolas Cage was known for being sort of a method actor. You can really see the method acting in this movie. It just doesn't work, but I loved it, and I loved the full out commitment that he made in this character. Like, it was crazy. You don't even know. Look, I had such a fun time. I ended up giving this movie 3 stars out of 5, but it got a heart from me because newfound love. If I'm ever feeling down and I just need a good laugh, I don't need no comedy movie. I need Vampire's Kiss in my life. It's so good. It was such a ridiculously over-the-top story. It's another one of those descent into madness kind of situations. It is just so out there and bizarre. You're basically kind of following this publishing executive, and he's kind of like a real jerk in his workplace. He's also having like these therapy sessions on the side, and then one day he gets bitten by a vampire and his behavior just becomes very erratic and just crazy, and it's just out of control. And then you're kind of in a situation whether this behavior is caused from a vampire's bite or whether it's all just psychological. When you think about it in hindsight, it is quite tragic what this character goes through. I feel bad for laughing at all of those scenes. It's so crazy. I would just highly recommend this movie because it's just so bizarre. It's just one of those movies that you just can't stop watching, even though you know it's kind of bad, but you just can't stop watching. The performance is so eccentric and just so over the top. It's just such a thrill and so funny. Oh my gosh, I haven't laughed this hard in so long. I know that this is kind of like comedy horror, but like I don't think he was intentionally trying to be funny. This was directed by Robert Berman. I don't think he did anything after this movie, which makes me so sad, but he made something so iconic. He deserves to make more movies. I'm a fan. Okay, so we're finally up to the last movie that I watched in July, and that is Kingdom Ashen of the North. And this was directed by Kim Song-han. They say that this is basically kind of a special episode for Kingdom, which is also a show on Netflix, which I'm a huge fan of. So it's basically like a Korean period political drama, but it also has like a zombie apocalypse going on. So it's kind of like that zombie genre and Korean period drama mixed together. It is like the perfect combination, and oh my gosh, when I say that they put effort into the production design of this show, yeah, it's crazy. I love it and I can't wait for season 3. Give it to me now, please. I've been waiting way too long for season 3 to come out, but this is kind of like a movie that you have to watch before season 3 kind of, because at the end of season 2 it ends with this quick introduction of a brand new character that's like briefly shown, and basically this movie Ashen of the North is giving that character like a backstory, so when you go into season 3 you kind of know her context. Okay, I wouldn't say it's a fun episode. It is quite a emotional and tragic backstory to this character. I was actually quite sad while watching it. I kind of understand her viewpoint and her motivations of like taking revenge. I understand you, girl, but also I'm kind of worried about our main central characters from the Kingdom TV show. If she becomes the new kind of villain, I'm gonna be a little bit sad because I kind of wish that she teamed up with our main characters. I kind of don't want to say too much about the story in general because it may kind of be a bit spoilerish for the Kingdom TV show. Also, the actress that plays Ashen, Jun Ji-hoon, she's like a really famous actress in Korea, and she just plays that tragic hero slash anti-hero so well. You kind of feel the hollowness of her once she's set on her revenge quest. You just feel for her, and I feel so sorry for her, and I kind of understand why she does what she does, and she has this warped sense of justice in a way, and it is just so enthralling to watch, and I just want her to win in the end. But also knowing the characters that I follow in Kingdom, I'm like, no, they need to team up, not be enemies. But who knows, who knows. So it is quite an emotional journey for her. It's a good revenge story, so I'm just a huge fan of the Kingdom TV series, so this was like an added bonus. So I ended up enjoying it. I gave it a 3.5 stars out of 5, but I did really like this movie as a good kind of subtext to like character motivations for her, and I loved it. If you haven't watched this movie, I would suggest that you catch up on the first 2 seasons of Kingdom. If you like a good period drama, it's set in kind of like ancient Korea. It has a lot of political intrigue, but it also has like a zombie apocalypse, and it is just such a fun ride. I love it. It's one of my favorite shows right now on Netflix. I would highly recommend it. And then you can watch Ashen of the North after you watch the first 2 seasons. So that is my recommendation, guys, and that is all for my July wrap up. I definitely feel like I watched a lot of things in the month of July. Not gonna lie, it's probably because I've been in lockdown and I can't really go out anywhere. So I've been spending a lot of my time just reading. I've been spending a lot of my time reading and just watching a lot of movies and TV shows. I should be a bit more active, go out for a walk or something around the block, but I don't. I've been stuck at home. So you wonder why I've been like this. Yeah, I should really get out and have some fresh air in my backyard at least. Am I getting a little cabin feverish? Maybe, my friends, but I don't know if I can do anything about it. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching until the end. If you have, let me know if you've watched any of the shows or movies that I've watched this month, and tell me your thoughts, because I definitely need some people to talk about this stuff. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys are all staying safe and sound, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!